Manchester United are finally starting to look like a proper team again. But here's the thing, this hasn't just come out of nowhere. For months, United's results were embarrassing. Pundits said that Amorim's system couldn't work, and yet underneath all of that, there's actually been signs of progress since the start of the season. The football has been better than some people have realised, and the margins were smaller than they seemed. Now, after a few big results, it's all starting to click, and suddenly the same ideas that were criticised for so long are actually winning Manchester United games. So today, we're going to break down the system, the tactics, and the mentality that have turned United's season around, and why this run might just last. First of all, let's start with the system. The system that has had so much attention on it since Amorim moved to Manchester United. Now, obviously, people want to boil that down to 5 at the back, when there's so much more to it than that. But let's start with 5 at the back. The misconception is that it's just a defensive system with an empty centre of the pitch because you've only got 2 midfielders. But the truth is, when this system works properly and everything is firing on all cylinders, those 2 wide centre-backs follow their men back into midfield and stop teams playing out. And also it means that duels take place with bigger players that are better at defending defenders. This means that the midfielders can focus more on the ball playing and they're less obsessed with defending all of the time. It's weird because on one hand you've got 2 central midfielders, but essentially, at any given moment, with those extra centre-backs pushing up, you can basically have 4 central midfielders when needed. It's regularly 3, and you've still got 4 defenders behind them. And what does this mean for Casemiro and Bruno? Well, basically, you've got less open spaces, less work to do, and better performances. Rob Dawson from ESPN tweeted the other day, Casemiro is so important for Amorim. United have only conceded 3 goals this season when he's been on the pitch. None since the start of September. And of the 16 goals that we've conceded in all competitions, he's been off the pitch for 13 of them. Both Brighton goals came after he'd been subbed. And this is a player that theoretically was washed and finished 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Jamie Carragher said that famous quote, "Leave the football before the football leaves you." This is a player that is 2 years on playing better than he was when he just turned 30. I'm not saying that Casemiro is world class or that he's back to the best that he's ever been at Real Madrid, but we're finally seeing a functional player playing really well for Manchester United, seemingly years after his so-called sell-by date. This is because the system actually allows players in the middle to have a bit more freedom and do a bit less work. Even though when it goes wrong, like we saw against Fulham at times, players and teams will have space against us to run through our midfield. When it's working, when you see those players doing what they're supposed to do, it gives your midfielders more time, less defensive pressure, and allows them to be the players that they are. Bruno Fernandes had a couple of less than stellar performances this season, admittedly. But again, he's shown his adaptability and quality. He was excellent against Brighton, leading the team in tackles, passes, shots taken, and defensive contributions as a whole. He does everything, and he's allowed to do that because of the system. Another quote we used to hear all the time was that Amorim isn't flexible. He doesn't adapt. He won't change his system. Even the Pope couldn't make him change. All of that stuff. The truth was, the next line after that Pope quote was, I will change the system, there will be an evolution. If I'm a player and I see that everyone is telling the coach to change the system and I change in this moment, they will look at me in a different way. It will change. I hope I have the time, but it will change. How many more times can he make it clear? He's not saying that he's too stubborn to change things. He's just saying that he's not going to accept changing because of pressure from the outside, from the media, or from fans. It's his decision when he changes, and United have to understand his principles and ideas before the tactics can vary. It feels like we're starting to see that now. I feel as though we are starting to see some tweaks from Ruben Amorim. We often defend in a 4-4-2 shape with one of those number 10s dropping back into midfield. We build up often in a 3-4-3 or even a 3-2-5 at times. Amorim is flexible, but he's not going to be told what to do and lose the respect of the dressing room in the meantime. The adaptability in style has been massive in recent weeks. The way we've played in all 3 of those recent games are very different. So let's get into it. Against Sunderland, It may have only been 50-50 in terms of possession, but United controlled that game. Sunderland only had 4 shots and only 2 on target. We defended really, really well and stopped Sunderland playing out from the back. Against Liverpool, it was very different. We went long almost every single time. Amorim saw Liverpool's weaknesses in midfield and encouraged United to win second balls with no number 9 on the pitch. Rather than fighting Van Dijk and Konate in the air, we thought, right, we'll fight McAllister and Gravenberch on the ground. And United won. We packed out the midfield with 4 players to Liverpool's 3, which meant we could win second balls easily and attack quickly. The first goal shows this perfectly. It set United up to win that game. And then finally, against Brighton, United's biggest strength was the press. Brighton are one of the best teams in the league at playing out from the back and keeping the ball. Dunk and Van Hecke have had the 4th and 5th most touches of any player in the Premier League. They're used to having the ball and playing out. Amorim didn't try and stop them from having the ball, he just stopped them from doing things with it. Whenever they made a mistake, United were there to pounce on it with a high press, and again, those centre-backs pushing up with their men, especially Luke Shaw, becoming essentially a third midfielder. That's why there isn't this huge gap in the middle. Again, instead of trying to stop teams from playing their game, Amorim tries to minimise the success of their strengths by being in a position to capitalise when they make errors. We're not trying to stop Brighton from having the ball, but when you have it, you're not going to be able to do a lot with it. And if you make any mistakes, Mbeumo's going to be there, Casemiro's going to be there, Luke Shaw's going to be there. And that forced Brighton to take long, low percentage passes down the lines into our defence and allowed us to sweep up the second balls. Sound familiar? It's the same principle as the Liverpool game, but a very, very different execution. The next section isn't a tactical thing, it's just the quality that we've got in attack. There's a bit of a misconception that United are taking bad shots from bad areas, meaning that yes, we may have got the most shots in the league, but it doesn't matter because they're all from outside the box and they were never going to go in. Well, United got the second most XG of any team in the league. We make lots of chances. We take more shots than anyone, but our XG per goal is very similar to Man City and Liverpool's, which means we're not just taking shots from anywhere and racking up this big number. They're still good quality chances. This 32% of long shots that United take outside the box is actually less than City, Liverpool and Chelsea. So it's not as though we take any more long shots really than any of the other teams in the top 6. I think only Arsenal and Spurs take fewer long shots than we do, and that's basically because Arsenal are only taking shots from corners. Again, I know not everyone loves XG, but only 10% of United's XG comes from outside the box. The other 90% is shots inside the box, good chances in good areas. This chance creation is good, and United have actually got good players implementing that now. We're just a little bit lacking clinicalness in the first few games of the season. We're actually seeing the opposite now, where United are slightly overachieving on XG, and this is what people talk about when it sort of levels out over a season. We're starting to see that even just over a sort of 10-game sample size that we've seen so far. And all of this points to a few things. We've got patterns of play that are dangerous and repeatable, and a level of adaptability that seems to be translating game by game while sticking to those core principles that Amorim is sort of so keen to not change. Win your duels, win second balls, and work hard. It sounds very basic, but just because you're flexible, it doesn't mean you don't have an identity. I think this idea of having one system that wins you every single game feels a little bit outdated to me. You've got so many teams trying to do different things. What are the odds that one system would beat all of them? You wouldn't eat a bowl of soup with a fork just because it was a really nice fork, a very tactically adept fork, would you? You'd use a spoon because it's the right tool for the job. And I think that is worth reiterating. It's not just Amorim's tactics. I'm not sitting here saying Amorim's perfected everything, we're amazing, he's amazing, he could do this with anyone. We've actually got really good players in attack. Bryan Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha alone brought 49 Premier League goal involvements last season. When you think of the players that they're replacing in Garnacho and Xerxes, they had a combined 13 goal involvements. That just makes an absolutely massive difference. De Ligt's been a monster this season at the other end. Luke Shaw seems to be understanding Amorim's tactics in the last few weeks as well. When you add all that up, that can start winning you games. Ahmad and Mbeumo seem to have this connection down the right-hand side now. The player quality is always the thing that wins games, and that's the thing that wins you trophies and titles. A great manager is a nice icing on the cake, but you literally can't name a team with bad players that's ever won the Premier League. It's just never happened. You have to have good players first. So I'm not giving Amorim all the credit for Bryan Mbeumo, but I do think that the way United have recruited this summer has made sense, and it allows us now to win 2 games in a row for the first time under Amorim, then 3 games in a row. Hopefully that can be many, many more. But what the manager does have to do is give the team a structural foundation to beat teams with. United have massively improved their quality in the final third, and it's showing with goals and results. I suppose the next thing we need to look at is, can this last? Is this just 3 games and I'm making a video sat here saying how good Amorim is, how good Man United are, and I'm just going to have egg on my face in 3 games' time when we've lost them all and we're back to square one and Amorim's on the cusp of being sacked? Well, let's have a look at why I think this will last. Because it's actually been happening pretty much all season. It's gone our way in the last few games. We've got the wins in the last few games, but I've seen some good signs all year. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't panicking after the Brentford game, or that I didn't think he might get sacked, or that he probably would get sacked. Because I think at that time, that seemed the most likely outcome to all of this. We've seen this before at Manchester United. Managers lose a big run of games, they can't turn things around, and they go. Well, that hasn't happened so far, and since then we've had some very good results, and the talk of Amorim leaving almost seems preposterous. But I do want to go back and look at a few games that didn't go our way this season. So it's not just everything's great in these last 3 and let's just forget all the other stuff because that was terrible, and if we pretend it wasn't there, then it can't hurt us. And I want to do that by going through 4 penalties. 3 that happened and 1 that didn't happen. That sounds a bit mad, but we'll get into it. The first penalty I want to talk about wasn't even a penalty. So I might be stretching a little bit with this one, but it's Cunha against Arsenal. He was fouled in the 88th minute, no penalty was given. As close as you're going to get to unanimously, people thought this was a penalty. Saliba kicks through his foot, brings him down inside the box, doesn't win the ball. United could easily have scored that and gone on to draw the game, taking 2 points off Arsenal and giving us an extra point. And not just that, but the confidence that would have brought of putting in a really good performance and getting some points to show for it as well. United didn't get the penalty, it didn't go in. The second one I want to talk about is Bruno's missed penalty in the 33rd minute versus Fulham. United were fantastic for that first half an hour, really good. Intricate, electric stuff in the final third, and that would have allowed us to turn that momentum into the goal that we deserved. Instead, we missed that penalty, we lost control of the game, and it became a cagey back and forth draw where Fulham grew and grew in confidence throughout the whole game. The third one, and this is the killer, United losing to Grimsby. Matheus Cunha, people sometimes forget this, had a penalty to win that game. I've spoke about it a lot. People who watch won't have forgotten. But I do feel like it's almost brushed under the carpet that if he just scores that 5th penalty in the shootout, United win the game. And it was a terrible performance. And it was always going to be one that resulted in huge criticism for Amorim, admittedly. Even if we'd have won that, he wouldn't have come out unscathed. But when Cunha steps up to take United's 5th penalty in the shootout, if he'd have scored it, we've won. He missed, we were knocked out of the cup, and it became, at that moment, one of the worst nights in United's recent history. The first time ever we lost to a team 3 leagues below us. That wouldn't have gone away by winning, but by now, it would sort of be a bit of a distant memory. We'd have already played Sheffield Wednesday in the cup again. Who knows how that would have gone, but I think they've lost almost every game this season. That would kind of have been a bloody hell. Do you remember that first half against Grimsby? Instead, it was a massive black mark on Ruben Amorim's name. And the 4th penalty is against Brentford. United lost the game to Brentford, and Bruno had a penalty at 2-1 down in the 76th minute. It would have put us level with a chance at pushing on for a winner. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we would have then gone on and won the game and give us extra goals that didn't happen, but if these penalties had been converted, United would now have 4 more points in the league and would be level with Arsenal at the top on 20. Again, you can't assume that everything else would have happened. You don't know if we would have beat Liverpool. You don't know if we would have beat Sunderland. But the point here isn't that United deserve to win all these games and that we haven't had bad moments, or if we'd have just scored these penalties, we'd be top of the league. I'm just illustrating to show these are such fine moments. These are the margins that there have been this season. Like, it's penalties. These are some things that go in 85% of the time, 90% of the time when we're talking about Bruno Fernandes. If we'd have just scored them, United would be in a radically different position. It would have been one of the strongest starts to a season in well over a decade. Again, I'm not going to retrace history and pretend we've been amazing the whole time. But when you just think these coin tosses that could go either way, the first few went against us and the last few have gone for us. And that is what this season has come down to. United are making every game competitive. We're often the better team in most games that we play. That's a massive improvement over last season. And even the season before, under Erik ten Hag, that never felt the case. And the final thing is the biggest thing in football. Confidence. That is the last sort of piece of the puzzle. We actually look confident now. These players haven't all of a sudden got way better. Amorim hasn't just changed who he is. He's made tactical tweaks and he's started to adapt. But a lot of what we're seeing now has sort of been building all season. We're just starting to see it click. and long may it continue. So that's how Man United have started winning games again. There's been a clear system, smart adaptations, and players that are finally believing in what they're doing. I don't think it's luck. I don't think it's a fluke. I think it's just a slow, deliberate work from the manager that is building the team in his image with his tactics. Right, then let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's been the biggest factor for the turnaround in these last few games? And also, 5 wins in the last 7. This isn't just these last 3 games. Is it Amorim's tactics? Is it the players feeling more confident? Or is it probably a culmination of all of these things? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you in a bit.